Well, hello there. It is I, your friendly neighborhood asexual, Sarah. Hello there. So, you might have heard of this word asexual before. It means someone who experiences little to no sexual attraction and or sexual desire. But what you may not know is there's actually the asexual spectrum, which is an umbrella of different identities and experiences. A shorthand for this is ACE, but for me personally, I like to call it the cake agenda. One thing I hear quite a lot is, oh, you're asexual. Does that mean you're like a plant? Do you asexually reproduce? No. But what if we could asexually reproduce? Now think about it. Organisms have been doing this for millions of years, and it seems to have worked out so far. And think about it. I am perfection. Surely the world would want more of me, right? So I thought I should probably go and do a little bit of science research because, I'm a scientist. My research was somewhat useful, if not quite tasty. But one of the things I found out is that organisms can asexually reproduce in lots of different ways. In fact, as I kept searching for these ways, more kept turning up as if the ways were reproducing themselves. It was quite interesting. Now, the one that people may typically think of first is fission. Now, fission is when you have one organism that splits into two identical organisms. An example of this are bacteria. Bacteria have been doing this for a very long time. And one of the things that they also do is share genetic material through something called a plasmid. This is how you're able to share antibiotic resistance, for example. Now, if we go over to the animal kingdom and talk about parthenogenesis. Now, parthenogenesis is when you have an egg which is not fertilized by a sperm, and that becomes an embryo, and then you get an animal from it. A famous example of this is the Komodo dragons. It now really makes sense why aces are obsessed with dragons. But other examples of animals that reproduce using this method are snakes and some turkeys. I should add here that plants can also reproduce in this way. So the last example of asexual reproduction I want to give you is fragmentation. So this is when an organism splits and produces a genetically identical organism from the segment. Now, an example of this are worms and starfish. So you might have seen starfish which had their arms chopped off and then the arm regrows back again. I do see some other benefits to this though. Hear me out. So imagine if you had an embarrassing tattoo. We all make choices, okay? So you could laser it off, or here's another solution. Chop your arm off, and then your arm will grow back, and then the arm becomes a new organism, and they can deal with the embarrassing tattoo instead of you. Simple. Now, do organisms just asexually reproduce or sexually reproduce? Not necessarily. Some can choose between the two. An example of this are hydras. Now, hydras can choose between asexual or sexual reproduction. So generally, if there's a lot of food about, they tend to choose asexual reproduction. And you know what? I actually really see where they're coming from. I quite frankly think sexual reproduction is so overrated. You got to go find a mate, which takes time and energy that I quite frankly do not have. I can't be bothered to do that. But also, if you think about it, technically, if I could asexually reproduce, I could become immortal. You see, at the Cake Agenda, we don't worship gods because
we are the gods.
And slowly but surely, we would take over the world, one victorious sponge at a time. Other types of cake are available. Other effects of being ace are people asking invasive questions about your sex life, really liking purple and not knowing why, wanting to own a pet dragon, being called a prude, and being able to sense garlic bread within a 5-mile radius. If you're interested in world domination, come join the Cake Agenda today and become a god.